What's up, you guys? This is Devin from CenturyFX Studios. We're back with another video. Today we're going to be talking about frequency separation retouching. And it sounds complicated, but it's really not, guys. It's a very sought after technique in Photoshop. Basically what this really simple technique allows you to do is add blurring and sharpening to the image at certain spots. That's the basic gist of it. But what you're able to do is take your tonal imbalances out of a portrait, and you're able to make it extremely consistent all the way through, also retaining sharpness and texture throughout the image. So basically you're tonally getting it even throughout the entire image. Okay, so frequency retouching basically starts off in Photoshop, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through my basic, starting from raw in Photoshop Lightroom editing. So I'm going to take an image basically from scratch. I got it, raw. I was out in a garden taking this image, shot it raw, put it in Lightroom, and now what I'm going to do is my color, my saturation, my vibrance, all the basic retouching things that you do. Since I shot it raw, it lacks a lot of juice. So I'm gonna put that juice back in it in Lightroom, and then I'm gonna send it off to Photoshop. Alright guys, so since you're staying along for the whole process, we're going to start off here in Lightroom. We're just going to add some adjustments really quick. Not going to hold you for long. Well, basically you're using the sliders. Okay, so Lightroom is what I like to use first off because it's easy for me. It's easier to see. It's a little bit faster in Photoshop when it comes to working with raw files from file to file, right? Lightroom is a little bit easier to use than Photoshop. It's really basic. It really allows me to get done exactly what I want to get done without having to go through all these tools, because Photoshop is really for like grungy in the shop, working on every little detail and really changing the axis of the image. Whereas in Lightroom, it's just like a digital darkroom where you can do, just basic general adjustments. You can do local adjustments, which are smaller adjustments like to a part of her face or part of the image, but that's really more suited for Photoshop. So for Photoshop Lightroom, or in short, we're going to call it Lightroom, we're just going to do some basic adjustments, things that people are already used to doing, sharpening, so on and so forth, like I said before, with the sliders. And that's pretty much all we're going to do. And after we finish with that, we are going to export it into Photoshop. Okay guys, we're here in Photoshop, and we're going to take this step by step. Hopefully I will not forget anything, but if I do, or if you do not understand something, a detailed description will be below in the inbox. This is a very sought after technique, frequency separation retouching. So we're going to go step by step here. So for the first step, what I'm doing is pressing CTRL-J twice or Command-J twice, depending on if you're Mac or Windows user. What this is going to do is this is going to make two layers on top of my background layer. Once you make two layers on top of your background layer, the layer right on top of the background layer will be your blur layer. So you're going to go down to, or up in the menus, and you're going to find filters, blur, Gaussian blur, right? Or Gaussian blur, however you want to say it. Once you do that, you're going to dial your Gaussian blur up, not too much. You don't want to be overly doing it, or you don't want to be under doing it. You're still in effect. So you want to find that happy medium where you get a nice smooth tone throughout the skin, but it doesn't blur the entire thing. So I can't really tell you exactly what that is, but I've never really been over 15.0. So I'm going to go around there, maybe 12, maybe 9, somewhere around there. So once I do that, I go back out, and then I go back to my layer that I made at the very top. So there's the background layer, that's my blur layer, and that layer that I haven't touched yet, we're going to highlight that layer. We're going to go to image, we're going to go down to apply image, and then when you get that subscript box, what that subscript box is going to ask you for is a couple of things that you don't want to overstress about. Most of the things are already there, but you want to go to your layer, highlight, and make it subtract. You want to go and make sure that the layer that you're using it with is those two layers. So you already on your sharpening layer, which you're making it now. So you want to apply it to your first layer above the background layer. So the layer you haven't used yet, or the layer that's your blur layer, you put that in your sub box for your apply image. And then when it asks you what blend you want to do, you're going to put subtract. So once you have that, everything else is fine. So don't touch it. Everything else, it's mathematically there for a reason. So don't touch it. I've been fine without touching it. So With that being said, once you're done with that, click OK, and it should look like a high pass filter, basically gray. But the thing about it is you have to make sure that you can see an outline of the subject or your image. If you do not see an outline of your subject or image, you did it wrong, so you might want to start from scratch and start back. So make sure you choose the correct layer in your highlighted box and that subscript for apply image, and that will get you your right high pass filter look. So once you get that, you go all the way up to that high pass filter layer or that new sharpening layer that you put in. You want to then make that blend mode linear light, so you're able to see your image. Now that you're able to see your image, you want to highlight your blur layer and activate your lasso tool. Once you activate your lasso tool, you want to go back to Gaussian Blur. Well, you want to circle something first with your lasso tool and then go to Gaussian Blur, and then you can then adjust your Gaussian Blur to how much you want to blend the two layers together. It's no longer a Gaussian Blur tool, it's more like a blending tool between the two layers that you made because of the adjustments that you made. So now it's a ratio between sharpness and blur wherever you want to be, instead of it being like just a blur on one layer that you use in Lightroom. So that's the efficiency of frequency separation. So you're pretty much done at this point. All you want to do is start to look at splotchy spots around where, you know, the model skin may or may not be as consistent as you want it to be. You want to add a little bit of blur, maybe a little bit more blur depending on what spot. And it's very selective and deliberate, and that's what makes it great and not so, you know, just a whole bunch of blur everywhere, or just a soften focus, which is not the most accurate way you can actually, you know, retouch an image of this magnitude. Another easy tip would be, instead of going to Gaussian Blur every time you make a lasso adjustment or you lasso something, what you want to do is you want to make Gaussian Blur a shortcut, and it's easy. You can find it anywhere. Just make like Control-F or Command-F be Gaussian Blur. So every time you lasso something, Control-F or Control-F twice, depending on how much you want to blur it, and you're pretty much done. That's pretty much it. One thing that I like to do, since we do have a blur filter over the entire image, what you want to do is go to that blur layer, and you want to start erasing some of that blur off of important parts of the image, like your eyes, hair, especially things that's supposed to pop out. It makes it even that greater of an image if you're able to separate your blur from your sharpness, because you're able to actually control what you're doing and not just making a global adjustment. Now, global adjustments are good for like temperature and stuff like that everything needs to be changed, but not for something like fine retouching where you need to zoom in and do things of that nature. That's what makes your work go to the next level. And my name is Devin from CenturyFX Studios, and thanks for watching, guys. This is frequency separation. Just keep watching, guys. Subscribe. I would just really like it if you guys subscribe to my stuff. I mean, that's all you gotta do. It's real simple. It's down there. I'm gonna have more videos to come. I talk in real layman's terms everybody can understand, and peace out.